Hi, I'm Mary Kopczynski, the CEO of Regalytics, and here's your update on this week's 13,737 regulatory alerts. The regulator of the week is Hester Pierce. She is one of the SEC commissioners, and I just love her. I've seen her speak once at a compliance conference, and I remember thinking, that speech was actually interesting. But now when I look through a sea of regulatory alerts, Hester's comments are like a shining light of just plain old simple fact. So her first comment this week was about the new proxy voting rules that were formally adopted by the SEC, and she said, ironically in her dissent, even if some of the policy choices embedded in these rules are not choices I would have made, I marvel at the staff's work. And wow, she is right. The SEC has been on fire for the last few months, just pumping out rule after rule. It's astounding. And these are no small rules. They are huge, which leads to her next statement on the proposal to consider adopting new rules for liquidity for open-end funds. And she said, I cannot support even releasing this proposal for comment. At a time when so much of our rule book is up for discussion, nobody has the bandwidth to consider properly a proposal that would fundamentally alter the way open-end funds operate, how investors interact with them, and the infrastructure surrounding them. To this I say, yeah, Hester, I totally agree. The SEC has successfully stressed everyone out enough. We definitely don't want you to stress yourself out, so take a break. Enjoy the holidays, SEC. I think we've all had enough for 2002. No more late December sleeper hits. Thank you very much. I doubt they'll listen to me, so I'll be here watching with Regalytics, and I'll let you know what they do anyway. The topic of the week for the second week in a row is again electric vehicles. Treasury hosted a virtual roundtable with stakeholders from across the automotive industry on implementation of the clean vehicle tax incentives in the Inflation Reduction Act. Ohio announced $100 million is now available to support the implementation of electric vehicle charging infrastructure throughout the state over the next 5 years. Drive Ohio, which is the division of the Ohio Department of Transportation, began accepting proposals from companies to install and operate EV charging stations. Market signals, friends. The Illinois Environmental Protection Agency also announced the opening of the second round of funding through Illinois electric vehicle rebate programs. Also on climate, IOSCO, which is a major international regulator with great influence over its membership of other securities regulators, is calling upon all voluntary standard-setting bodies and industry associations operating in financial markets to counter the risk of greenwashing related to asset managers and ESG rating and data providers. Remember when all the ESG people were considered bleeding heart do-gooders? Well, where there's money to be made, there is always fraud to follow, and some bad apples are telling lies to make money. Go figure. Another interesting alert by the Fed. Some of you may remember there was a kerfuffle where Pat Toomey of the Senate was upset with a Biden nominee, claiming she had gotten improper access to the Fed's reserve accounts for a fintech she was a part of. Well, in August, the Fed adopted final guidelines that established transparent, risk-based, and a consistent set of factors for reserve banks to use in reviewing requests to access these accounts and payment services. And they made a proposal this week that would require the reserve banks to periodically disclose which institutions have access to their accounts and payment services. NACHA, the National Automated Clearinghouse Association, put out a reminder that the obligations of participants in the ACH network include a risk assessment for third-party senders when they're acting as the originating depository financial institution. Even though it wasn't expressly stated, they are stating it now, and it was already effective back on September 20th. So, if you are a fintech using the ACH system, you better have a risk assessment program together. FinCEN put out its most recent financial trend analysis of ransomware related to the Bank Secrecy Act filings in 2021, and no surprise, it's still a big problem. FINRA announced this week that so far it has approved about 24 firms to provide services in securities backed by digital assets. I'm surprised it's so small. Regalytics is in the FINRA compliance directory. So if you're a fintech that does stuff in the broker-dealer world for crypto, it's not that hard. Go fill out the paperwork and you can call me if you have questions. For those of you following privacy, look, California is strengthening the CCPA. Again, I haven't been following it that closely, but I know how this stuff works. There's a big push to implement a new reg, and then when it's over, everyone just forgets about it. But that's the problem. Regulations change. So I really hope you don't get blindsided, but it looks pretty substantial. The FTC fined Vonage $100 million for dark patterns, where they basically made it impossible, confusing, and riddled with extra fees to cancel the service. So I think that's probably a good intervention there. Last up, new law being proposed in New Jersey that you can't smoke cigarettes or weed on a public beach. I'll let you know if it passes. And that's it this week for Regalytics. See you next Wednesday.